Thanks for staying for the session. So today's session is a little bit different. We're looking at the joint forces together, an effort together to bring industry and academia together. And we have three fantastic panelists here who I will invite in a minute to introduce themselves. So my name is Shuai. I'm from the School of Computing at Ulster University, one of the creators in the conference today. And I have personal experience working in some of the innovation centres in the school. I think both university and have seen fantastic changes in how research have come through and help to maybe accelerate some of the ideas and bring the research into life. Okay, so I'll pass on to the panelists to introduce themselves.
Yeah, so my name is Dr. Alan Kennedy. I'm the founder of Pulse AI. We're a local company based here, building AI-based technology for clinical decision support in cardiology. So we primarily work on interpreting electrocardiogram signals. We are an Ulster University portfolio company and also are backed by the Mayo Clinic in the United States. So we have a global presence at the moment. I'm looking forward to having our discussion today.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Alfie Beard, and I'm a senior research specialist in BT. My background is in mathematics, but I've been in BT for 7 years now, building AI systems that we can deploy to cyber defense, so trying to stop attacks autonomously, which is obviously a big challenge, but very interesting one. BT has a lot of history in research, and it was actually really cool to see the last talk talking about like Bletchley Park and Colossus, because previous BT, many years ago, a lot of the guys who were in BT research or was post office research then were heavily involved with that. So we've got a rich history of innovation, and we still do a lot of research across things like cybersecurity, kind of fiber, future networks, and things like that. And my background, though, is in the cybersecurity side of things, and I'll talk a little bit more about that today.
Thanks. Tim Silversides, so I'm the co-founder of Patelia. Patelia future-proofs business. And we work with some of the biggest names across IT infrastructure and especially financial services. So we're Northern Ireland based. We've been going about 5 years and have a headcount of around 50 people. And we've collaborated very closely with both Queen's University and Ulster University on a number of projects, which I look forward to talking about.
Okay. So it's really great to have you guys here to share the experience. So I'll start with you, Tim, there. If you can maybe share your experience of working with universities and maybe some examples of innovations which wouldn't have happened quite easily if the research with university wasn't there, for example. If you can start with you.
Sure. So probably a few things I could mention, but one in particular comes to mind. So we're one of, I believe it's 8 companies working on the Queen's Cyber AI Hub, and we have a project there that's very much themed around vulnerability management. I can talk more about that if anyone's interested, but one thing I'd particularly like to call out is that probably around a year, 18 months ago, as part of that project, we were exploring some real-world applications of RAG, and specifically of graph RAG techniques, which came out of our interaction at that stage with the experts in Queen's University. I think having an early exposure to a technology that now is very widely talked about was hugely useful for us, because it turns out that we're having very parallel conversations in the financial services world with some of our major US clients. And the timing was actually amazing, because we almost gathered the expertise and the know-how from our interactions with the university in the cyber domain, and were able to apply that very quickly to production use cases in financial services. So it was a great example of taking the expertise and applying that cross-domain and bring it into real-world scenarios very quickly. It's just one example. I certainly could talk about more.
Okay, and so Alfie, I'll ask you the same question, but maybe share a little bit more about your experiences and I think what has worked well and maybe hasn't worked well. And I think the BTEC has been lasting for a long time, and it's continued as well. It's fantastic news. So, and you've been there from quite the start, so you have lots to share about the partnership and the relationships.
Yeah, sure. So a lot of my research, or well, I should say BT Research does a lot of work with universities, but one significant one that I'll talk about now is with the University of Ulster through the BT Island Innovation Centre, or BTIC as we call it. And we've been doing work in that program for a number of years now across a range of different things, including like AI-related research, but also cybersecurity stuff. So I'll talk more on the cyber stuff. We've got a really great example, actually, of something we built with the University of Ulster, so jointly kind of co-innovated, which is something we call the correlation engine. And the correlation engine basically is a way to link signals in different security alerts so that you can basically find threats faster as opposed to looking into kind of siloed different alert feeds. This means we can find the threats faster, and actually we can find threats that we maybe wouldn't have found before, which is really important and critical. And actually something we've now deployed into security operations centers in BT. So it's something our analysts are kind of trialing and testing at the moment. And without working with the university, this would have been much, much harder, right? Because it makes the innovation cycle much quicker. We're able to evolve and get better results quicker. And we can test on their kind of on their lab environments and systems that maybe we couldn't do in industry. There are challenges with this, and I think Shuai sort of alluded to it. At the start, there's always a challenge of alignment, right? You need to make sure the research you do is aligned with the research like your business wants to do. So universities obviously have long-term interests in research that they want to do over many, many years. But in industry, you kind of want results now, right? Businesses want a solution tomorrow, not like in 5 years. So finding good alignment is a really key part to that. But we've worked hard, and it's been great working with the University of Ulster because we found a really nice alignment on cybersecurity research with the skills and talent that they have, and with what solutions that we need within BT to build and develop the stuff that we need to basically help drive security and make it the world a lot safer for everyone.
Great. Thank you very much. Alan, your experience is a little bit different because I think your PhD was carried out in Ulster University. I think your partnership was maybe more natural. It wasn't kind of, companies come to us or we go to companies. So can you maybe just share a little bit more? And how did you keep that innovation alive after so many years and post your PhD?
Yeah, so I did my PhD in the School of Engineering 2013, I think, so I'm aging myself now, but then continued on and did a PhD there as well. But it was before the era of really advanced machine learning and advanced AI, of what we're talking about and what we're talking about at this conference, because we were working with expert systems. We were working with cardiologists and trying to build like decision rules to see if we could make a computer act like a cardiologist. And then since working there, I worked more recently at Philips Healthcare locally here in digital pathology, where I was a deep learning AI research scientist. So we achieved a lot in that sphere within a very small period of time. And then the company got set up on the back of that, thinking, I wonder if we can apply this to this traditional problem that I had during my PhD, which was the automated interpretation of electrocardiogram signals. So thankfully, within Ulster and within the School of Engineering, we had a lot of expertise that dated right back to the invention of the portable defibrillator here in Northern Ireland many moons ago, primarily around hardware, so ECG recording hardware and defibrillator technology that was invented in Northern Ireland. And a lot of that came out of NIBEC, which is, I think it is still going in the new campus. It's just not quite the same. It used to be a big white building, and now it's like a floor in the Belfast building. But that sort of rich heritage is there. In the hardware side, I thankfully was an expert in software. So we set the company around having a next generation software company that could do AI. And we could really, we spun into Ulster University then and was able to access the advanced understanding they had of being able to spin out very sophisticated and successful companies in cardiology and in cardiovascular medicine. So it was very harmonious in that sense. It was my former supervisors that supervised my PhD that we were able to collaborate with. And the collaboration is going on to this day. And it built a real reputation within the company. So when we went to engage with other, even in the US, other partners and so forth, we had that backing from Ulster University in the early days, which really helped us go from sort of 0 to 1 and something that was just me in my room during COVID to like now we have a company and we are backed by the Mayo Clinic and things are going really quite well. So we maybe had a unique journey in that sense where I sort of left and then I came back to Ulster again. So it's been an exciting journey so far.
Brilliant. So I'll start off you follow-up question if it's okay. So if we look at the partnership and if we kind of review on what has worked and hasn't worked and looking at how the partnership has kind of accelerated the innovation, what do you think you benefited the most from the collaboration? Is that the talent pipeline? research skills, or is there something else? The facilities we have, what is that I think you needed the most for the company to work with the university?
What we were able to really draw down from the experience that Ulster had in that was not to repeat some of the mistakes that they already did, I guess, in setting up some of the spin-out companies and growing them into successful companies and exiting them. So we were able to draw down on the expertise and the experience that they had within the field specifically that we were working in. So we were able to set up the company in a way where we could be innovative and fast. And it's interesting saying innovative and fast because it's never as quick as you want it to be in a startup because it is an institution and they have a lot of other things to worry about as well. So you're teaching classes, you're doing a bunch of other stuff within the university, and you're not always number one priority is to do something for Pulse AI when you're engaging with the university. But we were able to structure it in such a way that we could take information and then go away on ourselves and use some of our graduates that we employed and some of the more junior staff to execute on those ideas that were coming from some of the senior staff, which time was very spread thinly when we were working with them. So that worked really well because we were able to use the time extremely effectively, but it didn't slow us down waiting for example, a professor trying to write some code for us. We would get the idea and then we could implement those ideas very effectively. So it was more the knowledge generation which really benefited us. Yeah.
Brilliant. And Alfie, I think the support framework for BTEC has been well set up, and I think there's a number of channels that has been supporting the collaboration. So can you maybe share a little bit of your personal experience on the cyberspace? How the partnership has worked well?
Yeah, so it's worked really nicely because in the university, obviously, you've got access to a lot of really talented individuals with great skills that are highly relevant for what we're trying to do. And actually, those guys bring fresh perspectives, fresh takes on things that maybe we wouldn't have. And actually, another big thing that's really underrated is that cross-domain expertise you get in the university. People with, like, a lot of the time we're talking about AI systems and applying them to different problems. But in the university, you've not got people who applied them for one specific problem because there's someone around the corner who's applied it to a different problem or different technique to a different situation. All of that knowledge is really important. And that's something that we might not be able to access otherwise. But having that brings new solutions, such as the correlation engine I mentioned, but also a number of other things, like in terms of finding threats on our network using traditional threat detection methods. We get a lot of insight from the university on techniques that maybe they've applied to other areas too. For instance, like something that might apply to like just finding something in nature, right? Like maybe an algorithm to detect whether there's, flooding in a site or something. Those sort of algorithms that are maybe temporal can apply to cybersecurity too. Getting that access is really good. And actually infrastructure is a big part of it. Having access to the infrastructure, the lab environments that the university have. So in the past, we've done work with the IoT lab there, collected lots of data. And it's great because we can break it, destroy it, doesn't matter, and set it back up again really quickly. And all that knowledge we can get and use to train new algorithms, and that would be really hard to do otherwise.
Okay, thanks very much. Tim, I think I'm going to ask you about the nature of the project, and most of them are interdisciplinary, and then I guess the researchers in the companies and researchers in universities think differently, and I think, can you maybe share some experience of how these are coordinated and to make it work?
Yeah, sure. I guess a couple of themes, Shuai, that come to mind, kind of picking up on that thread. I suppose one is you're absolutely right about just the different perspective, hugely valuable for us. I can think of a couple of reasonably challenging problems for us around sentiment analysis and voice analytics, where essentially we interacted with the problems a little bit internally, and at the same time we went and had conversations with some domain experts in the universities, and very quickly and in a very nice way, essentially we got the answer of, you're doing this the hard way, what about some paper, some technique that was well defined. So just bringing that slightly different perspective and that breadth of awareness of the existing state of the art saved us a lot of pain and heartache. And probably the other thing I'd like to mention, I'm really just echoing Alfie's point, is that kind of cross-disciplinary research and input and how valuable that is. I know some of the research that we benefited from has really been the fruit of someone from the School of Computing, in our case, and someone from the School of Finance being in the same room and each bringing their own specific expertise, but able to work together to, if you like, present us with a distilled output of here's how to apply this technology in this domain to solve this problem, and quite importantly for us, remain compliant with the relevant regulatory regimes.
Okay.
So I couldn't stress enough that cross-disciplinary piece is bringing a lot of value.
Okay, and so I guess the discussion wouldn't complete without the talk about ethics and how these aspects and the transparency, the fairness has been kind of built into the framework from the very start. And I know this is an important question for all of you guys throughout applications, whether it's fintech, cyber, or healthcare. So I'll start off you with Alfie, and so yeah, if you can maybe just talk through with us about your experience.
So in terms of like ethics and
Yes,
transparency,
uh-huh.
yeah, okay. So, I mean, in cybersecurity, trust is everything, right? We can't have an AI system that says, shut down this service or block this traffic without knowing why. The why is critical. No analyst is going to trust it otherwise, and you're not going to get any takeoff whatsoever, which is a big problem. Because fundamentally, they need solutions that can respond to threats autonomously, because it's a major challenge at the moment, and it's only getting made worse with advances in AI, lowering the barrier to entry for cyber criminals. So transparency is absolutely crucial for doing that and explaining decisions. We've done a lot of work actually through Ulster and also within BT. So within BT Research, we've been working really hard on visualization for a number of years now, because we need to tell the story of our data, explain to people why we're seeing what we're seeing, and illustrate that so that it's really clear and interpretable, not just to cybersecurity analysts, but all levels in an organization. Because you need to, I mean, fundamentally, the seniors in your business are the ones who make the financial decisions. You need to explain to them why they need to invest in more cybersecurity, or why they need to invest in other things. So telling the story is really key. But also within the University of Ulster and within the correlation engine I mentioned, we've done a lot of work and done some really interesting work on explainability, taking the outputs of a correlation engine, which is just kind of like meta alerts, kind of a bit cryptic to no one who understands cybersecurity, and using a large language model to actually explain those, explain the attack, explain how that came about. And through doing that, we can now illustrate what's going on to more people and more broadly, which can make things much easier, much clearer for people to understand. So transparency is key, and it's baked into cybersecurity.
Alan, in the health tech domain, obviously the risks of using AI and the compliance and assessing those are I think, at the highest category. So how did you build that into developing your innovation project?
Yeah. So we have a lot of first-hand experience of this directly. So right from the initial training of your, and this is what the regulators kind of said as well, and it was didn't surprise us, but it was an interesting insight. So we trained a lot of our initial models on the electronic healthcare record from the Mayo Clinic, but if you look at the demographic of people that have access to the Mayo Clinic and who they are, it's usually rich, middle-aged men who are typically white. So the ethnicity spread is actually not very good. So you're actually, when you record an electrocardiogram from someone, it does change based on gender, and it changes based on ethnicity as well. So what we had to do then was start building sort of audit systems where we could sample evenly from these type of demographics, from the genders as well, and gender in terms of cardiovascular disease, and females have a much worse outcome than males as well. And we're trying to understand that a little bit better too. So actually it's been quite good for the type of systems that we make, that these new AI, because there's been traditional systems for years where we never talked about any of these things that were built with heuristics, with the traditional signal processing, and we never really understood but because of this real push to try and understand when biases do occur in AI systems, these types of frameworks are now coming through. But one of the things we're building in the next product within our company is an autonomous system in primary care that can refer into secondary care and not have the primary care physicians have to do ECG interpretation, which they don't like doing. So another way to think of it is that people are very forgiving for people who don't have a lot of training making mistakes, as opposed to AI making mistakes, which is interesting because we know we can outperform a primary care physician doing ECG interpretation, but if we make a mistake with our software, the consequences and how we get challenged on that is much more significant than perhaps an incorrect referral that gets pushed from primary care to secondary care and then back to primary care again. And we've got horrendous stories on that side. So to look at that, it has to be within the context of what humans do now, I think, as well, but also understanding more deeply how these systems work so we don't ingrain a bias in the output almost by accident in terms of the data you're working with. So it is certainly an area that is growing a lot now, and it's quite nice to see that coming through.
Tim, I think, well, if you take the fintech work that Patelia has been doing in the last while, I think the risks are associated with using AI is just as high as the health tech domain. So can you maybe share a little bit of your experience of how you, the company's approach on embedding those assessments into the product?
Sure. And I guess very much like Alan's experience, we're working in a highly regulated industry, and one area of particular focus for us has been around compliance and regulatory compliance in the financial services space. So for us, and perhaps equally importantly for our clients, explainability of AI systems is absolutely vital. It's not even negotiable, because the financial regulator, Financial Conduct Authority in the UK and equivalent bodies elsewhere will require explainability for any system. For example, it's analysing market manipulation or market abuse or carrying out trade surveillance. They will even go so far as to say that they will prize explainability above accuracy if forced to the choice. So that's been a huge area of focus for us, and it's absolutely been an area where we've benefited hugely from the academic input. I'm probably going back, harping on about the cross-disciplinary thing, but it's one particular area that illustrates the value of that very clearly. To have someone in the room who understands a range of models and a range of AI and machine learning techniques, and how explainable each of them there is, because there's a spectrum. And on the other hand, to have someone who deeply understands the regulatory requirements and the operating environment has been super helpful for us. Ultimately, it's our decision. We're the ones building the products, delivering solutions to the clients, but to have a range of well-informed and clearly defined options coming from the academic experts has definitely guided us on that journey.
It's really great to hear. I think I'm going to join the last two questions into one. I think the break are due to start, but we're a bit delayed to start with. So we are in the AI next track. So, and you're all working in different application domains. So I'm going to ask you to share with the audience here today on what you think this is going to go next in the next, I don't know, 2-3 years. It seems to be quite a long time to predict what's going to happen in the domain. And if any company, especially the SMEs, are wanting to tap into the resources with university, and what advice would you give them? I'll start with you, Alan.
Yeah, sure. So what we think is next, and I sort of talked about it a little bit in my last answer, is I think there will be more autonomous diagnostic tests coming through being enabled with AI. And it's nice to think you're not crazy in this. For a few years I thought this might happen, but then the regulatory framework was never really there for this type of thing to occur. So years ago, you would have been a clinical decision support. You can support a physician making a decision, but you can't have an autonomous system on its own. But in America now, they screen for diabetic retinopathy in primary care with a fully autonomous system. So you get referred to secondary care if they pick something up in primary care. And also now, more recently in the NHS, they have a screening for melanoma that runs fully autonomously in primary care and refers to secondary care. So that's really quite inspirational. I think what we can hopefully achieve within the company is be the first cardiology-based approval for an autonomous system to refer into secondary care based on the primary care. So I think more autonomy will happen with obviously the guardrails and the clinical validation in place to do those things. And in terms of engaging with the university, I think we sort of think about it is very potent engagement, but it may not be very often. So we'll be working with them, and we will understand some of the more forward thinking and some of the advice that we'll be getting, but it's really on us to implement that within inside the company. And I think if you come to the university and engage thinking there'll be a lot of work done on the university side on your project, that can be perhaps something that would, one, create the timelines getting pushed on the project if that does occur, or maybe there is simply just not capacity or bandwidth to fulfill the hopes and dreams that you would have for engaging with that. So my advice would be is to take what they're really good at and absorb that from them, and then implement it within your own company with your own resources. And I think that is a good recipe for success. Yeah.
Thanks very much. Thank you. Alfie?
Yeah, so in cyber, I kind of alluded to a little bit already, but I think we need to see, well, it's not we need to see massive improvement in autonomous cyber response, responding to attacks much faster and more autonomously. I mean, trust needs to be baked into that, obviously, but the scale of the threats we face is really large, both in number, speed, and scale, and sophistication's going up too. AI is making this harder, right? Attacks are now moving faster. It lowers the barrier to entry, right? People who don't know anything about like cybersecurity or becoming hackers can basically go into ChatGPT or something and get it to produce something, which is potentially malicious. That's dangerous, and that if lots more people can do that, it makes the problem much harder. So being able to respond autonomously to threats makes a huge difference, and that's something I think we should see a lot more focus on. I mean, billions is spent on threat detection. Comparatively, relatively little has been spent on the response side of things. So I think we'll see a lot of progress in that in the next few years, and I think we definitely need to as well. On the university front and working with the university, I think if anyone in here is from business and thinking about working with the university, I guess some advice and something to think about would be to kind of first figure out exactly what your problems are, like in your company, in your business. What are the biggest challenges you face? And then look into kind of universities, try and find out which universities match up with those problems, right? Where's their good alignment, right? Which universities have good focus and good research on what you're interested in, and then try and work together. Because I think if you get that alignment, a lot can be done. And it becomes like an innovation flywheel, right? The university starts coming up with new research, you can adopt that, right, and build in solutions, then that gets adopted by your customers, and then you've got new research to build on top of, and it can keep spinning. If you get good alignment and keep building and churning out the results, you can get a lot of progress and make a lot of difference for both your business and the university's research.
Brilliant, brilliant. Thank you very much, Tim.
Sure. So I guess in the financial services world, you have a pretty broad spectrum in terms of appetite for adoption of AI, and I think we see that particularly in retail banks, which are relatively big and cautious organizations for understandable reasons. So in terms of where AI has made an impact already, I would say we see that much more today in kind of back office internal processes and workflows, where there's more opportunity and more scope for human oversight and human in the loop type deployments. When it comes to more consumer facing, one of your customers and an AI system and letting them have at it, I think they're understandably a little more reluctant to do that. So you do see that kind of two-speed rollout, and actually some of the guys from Danske Bank who were in the other track earlier, I think we're very much validating that assessment. As far as engagement with universities is concerned, I think it is fair to say that for an SME, if you haven't done this before, it is kind of overwhelming. And sometimes you're not quite sure what you need. Sometimes you don't know if you need brand new research or if you just need to know about existing research and get signposts to that. I think a couple of things locally with an NI hat on have really helped with that. One is AICC. For those of you who are going to be here tomorrow, I think you'll get a lot more coverage of what they're doing and the kind of support they provide. But that's very much a toe in the water, a very interactive problem discovery with the experts in that team and figuring out what you need. Maybe it's not AI at the end of it, but that kind of conversational discovery will help bring that to light. And the other, I guess, is there is a range of slightly more formal, longer term support, anything from innovation vouchers to KTPs. So there's plenty to explore. I would say the best advice if you're starting from zero is talk to someone who's on that journey, and I'm happy to talk to anyone in the room who wants to know more. But use your networks and talk to people who've kind of engaged with the universities and got value out of that collaboration already.
Brilliant. Let's thank for all the panelists for taking the time today and share your experience. And if there's any questions, people are interested, can I direct them to you as well? Yeah? Okay. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Sean.